Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited that so many of you could join us today for On Unlocking a Woman's Voice, a conversation with Elissa Bassist and Carolyn Cooke. I'm Izzy Angus, the events coordinator for the Public Programs Department of the California Institute of Integral Studies, a nonprofit university in San Francisco. As many of us are descendants of settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcibly brought to this continent, we CIIS public programs must recognize and never forget that our university's building in San Francisco occupies traditional, unceded Ramaytush Ohlone lands. If you are interested in learning more about Native lands, languages, and territories, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. Before we start, I want to go over a few general tips and troubleshooting items. We will have a Q&A after the conversation tonight. Please submit your questions at any time using our anonymous web form, which is linked in the event description below this video. Our presenters will pull questions from that form after the event, and we will try to get to as many as we can. We do have automatically generated captions for this event, which you can toggle on and off using the closed captioning button in YouTube. If you have any issues with your audio or video, we suggest you first reload the page, and then if you still have issues, adjust your video settings in YouTube. Now, let me first introduce our presenters, Elissa and Carolyn, and then we'll get right to the conversation. Elissa Bassist is an essayist, humor writer, and editor of the Funny Women column on The Rumpus. As a founding contributor to The Rumpus, she's written cultural, feminist, and personal criticism since the website launched in 2009. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Marie Claire, Creative Nonfiction, The New Yorker, Long Reads, and more, including the anthology Not That Bad, Dispatches from Rape Culture, edited by Roxane Gay. Currently, she teaches writing at the New School, Catapult, 92nd Street Y, and Lighthouse Writers Workshop. She lives in Brooklyn and is probably her therapist's favorite. Carolyn Cooke's books include Amour and Psycho, Daughters of the Revolution, and The Bostons. Her fiction has also appeared in AGNI, New England Review, The Paris Review, Plowshares, Best American Short Stories, and Prize Stories, the O. Henry Awards. A first recipient of the Penn Robert Bingham Award, she has also won fellowships and awards from Breadloaf, the National Endowment for the Arts, the California Arts Council, the Jurassic Foundation, MacDowell, UCross, the Vermont Studio Center, and Yaddo. Cooke is a professor in the Department of Interdisciplinary Arts and Writing MFA at CIIS. And now, let me turn it over to Elissa and Carolyn.
Hi, Elissa. Good evening.
Hi, Carolyn and everybody else out there.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Great to have this big group of people to hear you. Could I start with a compliment?
Please, of course. It's mandatory.
I wanted to say that Hysterical is the story of your great awakening from our collective misogyny that makes you and all of us, the whole culture, sick. And especially if, like you are a digital native and grew up online, sort of able to connect with that culture constantly. And it's really also the story of how you woke up from that sleep of misogyny. And I just wanted to say that having spent a little bit of time with you, I feel like I know you, and you're one of the most awake people I've ever met.
Oh my God, that is the nicest compliment. Thank you so much. I took 2 naps today, so that's such a compliment.
It shows. I'm looking so forward to this conversation. Your book is absolutely enraging. And I think you also offer some incredibly useful insights that you're going to share. I think, not to spoil the book, you still need to read the book, everyone, but you'll leave tonight with at least three things you can do right now to wake from the sleepy, hideous misogyny of the culture and awaken as Elissa has. So that's great. And I'm going to ask you to read a passage. You're going to read one of my favorite passages from the book. And just to sort of set it up, I think of a colleague of mine in women's spirituality said that Toni Morrison's Beloved was about, it was really the proof and the evidence of how slavery made Black people crazy in this country, how slavery made people crazy, and not just Black people, it made everybody crazy. And Hysterical is about how our culture makes us crazy, not just women, although they're more often called crazy, but everybody is crazy. And so you did a lot of research beyond your own personal experience. So there's personal experience and research. And this passage, I think, is a wonderful example of the way you fuse the personal and the political.
Thank you. So this is near the end. It's a collection of talking cures that I researched and tried on myself, and it's a few scenes of me going through it. So here I go. How exactly to speak again? How to do what women have been conditioned not to do? How to go against every instinct and societal directive in a world that prefers a woman's death to her opinions? Ancient cultures had ceremonial catharsis, in which laws were passed specifying the location, time, duration, personnel, choreography, musical content, and verbal content of the women's expression of grief or sorrow, writes Anne Carson in The Gender of Sound, located on this bookshelf. In the late 19th century, catharsis was a psychoanalytical technique. Dr. Freud, if you've heard of him, helped hysterical patients, AKA women with acid memories and hideous feelings that tainted the soul, through hypnosis and by inducing them to talk about what they couldn't, with the hope that the mind and the mouth this time were up to it. He then put the unnameable into a narrative and the symptoms into a critical interpretation, and supposedly ghostwriting and analyzing the women's stories rid them of their symptoms. A famous patient known as Anna O, whose real name was Bertha Pappenheim, called this the talking cure. A little trivia, Bertha ended up founding the Jewish feminist movement later on in her life. So after she was cured, she went on to do great things. I'd given the unspeakable a plot before. During one of my many, many breakups, I saw a Buddhist type therapist in San Francisco who tried an experimental psychotherapy procedure on me called EMDR. He'd used EMDR on 9/11 survivors to guide them through worst case scenarios and to the other side of their fear. It's not covered by insurance. I'd thought, how dramatic to use this therapy on me, just another heartbroken girl. But I was game for any available exorcism. EMDR works based on the mind-body connection and the mind-body likeness, i.e., just as repeated physical trauma doesn't heal, repeated mental injury won't either. And trauma is an injury to the psyche that behaves like an open wound, as Freud said about the complex of melancholia. Typically in EMDR, a therapist asks a patient to recall a traumatic event, while the therapist directs the patient's eye movements or taps their hands. And the varied sensory input helps neutralize a traumatic memory or unfreeze it in order to leave it behind. Memory isn't even the right word though, because trauma isn't remembered from the past. It's a reaction, relived without end, like chronic deja vu, where the traumatized, confused tenses and feel as if the past is in the present and that there is no tomorrow. The traumatic moment must be made into a memory. Mind and body and EMDR must move it from now to then. How did I injure my psyche? The internet. Most of my conversations with my ex-boyfriend, whose name was Fuck Taco, were via GChat or Gmail or text. So 90% of our interactions were transcribed and stored. And the 24/7 access to our history suspended it and us and me. I wasn't with Fuck Taco anymore, but I experienced time as if I were, because I could return to our archive and fire up the relationship at will. Similar to a distinct catastrophe, my therapist explained. This overloads your brain until it can't integrate memory normally, and your memories resemble traumatic ones, unedited and locked. When my therapist turned on the paddles, instead of asking me to recall a distressing event, he asked me to describe a fantasy nightmare. All I had to do was grip as he asked me to imagine Fuck Taco's wedding to someone who wasn't me. What does he look like walking down the aisle? My heartless therapist asked. I squeezed my eyelids, trying to envision Fuck Taco in an aisle, in a ceremony, in a wedding costume. He looks happy, I said, as the paddles vibrated rhythmically left to right. That felt like enough work for one day. But the therapist wanted to know more. He trauma-explained that trauma amputates our imagination and arrests the stories we tell ourselves in order to live. We can't imagine anything could be different, and change is unthinkable. By asking me about events that hadn't happened, the therapist was really asking me to write a new story and inhabit a new reality and experience an alternate ending and reroute my heart. Where's the wedding, he asked, and I answered. The left paddle surged, then the right, messing with my sensory perception and neural network. Healing trauma may be a matter of repairing disconnected neural networks, the therapist had said when he introduced me to EMDR. So I went through my past plans about my future with Fuck Taco to undo them, to rewrite what I'd written in my mind in stone. We wouldn't have a big wedding or a small one. Our wedding would not be medium-sized. We wouldn't waste a lifetime together. Death wouldn't do us part. We wouldn't even settle for each other. My therapist turned off the paddles and the old religion was over. In the book, this is a much longer scene. It takes a lot longer for the old religion to be over. At the end, I cried until I lost muscle, until I was done crying over the lost man who I had lost. The therapist asked me if I was okay, and I was shocked that I was. I was okay and not dead at all like I thought I'd be. Years later, when I was sick, an acupuncturist prescribed her own talking cure, a version of expressive writing, psychologist James Pennebaker's psychological remedy for pain, and his theory that writing one's wounds helps close them. Pennebaker had asked his introductory psychology students to think about the darkest shit that had ever happened to them, and then he divided them into 3 groups and instructed them to sit alone for 15 minutes, 4 days in a row, and open a vein to write, like a personal essay class, but for science. One group wrote about current life events, which had minimum emotional voltage. Another group detailed their very bad memory, which had medium emotional voltage. Group 3 recounted the dark shit and how they felt about it and the lifelong impact, which had maximum emotional voltage. Prior to the experiment, the students were asked about their medical histories, and they disclosed major and minor health problems, including cancer, high blood pressure, ulcers, flu, headaches, and earaches. In Pennebaker's results, students who wrote with maximum emotional voltage experienced a 50% drop in doctor's visits. In repeated studies based on the same protocol, the results were the same. Improved health from writing correlated with improved immune function. In most studies of emotional awareness and expression therapy, writes science journalist Eleanor Cummins in Is All the Pain in My Head, sick people reported a significant reduction in their pain, around 20%, which is on par with just about every pain management tool, including opioids, antidepressant and anti-seizure medications, meditation and mindfulness therapies, massage and physical therapy, and more. As someone who tried antidepressant and anti-seizure medications, meditation and mindfulness therapies, massage and physical therapy, writing worked, and I 11 out of 10 recommend it. As well as reading the rest of my book that has a lot more ways to cure yourself by talking and writing.
Thanks, Elissa. I forgot to mention, it's probably in the description, that this is a tragicomic memoir. It's an enraging, funny, tragicomic memoir with really dark shit in it. It's interesting. I mean, there are a couple of things. One is that in a way, writing got you into trouble, right? In your relationship. And you speak about that really beautifully. You have a line, my voice is most natural in an email when I'm trying to convince someone to love me. And then writing gets you out of it. And I love that, because I think there is a way in which writing both takes you into the sort of weird, personal, obsessive place. In your book, definitely in the relationship that happens on social media. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about love in the digital age, and how it's possible actually to not know much about the person you're madly obsessed with, because it's kind of you expressing and you creating, and the dangers of that, and kind of how that got you into trouble.
Yeah.
And the writing, the expressive writing, is one of the 3 takeaways from the book that will save you, right, from the toxic culture we live in.
Yes. So you say that writing got me into this mess, but I don't think that's exactly true. I think it was the internet, writing on the internet, that got me into this mess. I think if I had just had to write a letter and wait for it to be delivered and then to have a response, that would have been really different. And I may have been sane if it weren't for the internet. So the internet was born, it seemed, along with me. We were born at the same time, but it became really popular when I was in, well, AOL. We started getting these CDs offering us 50 free hours of World Wide Web experience when I was in middle school. And we could sign on and connect. And I was 12 years old. And I remember my first screen name was Vic Sick Angel, like an abbreviation of Victoria's Secret Angel. And then I had another one called Candy Apples with a K, and then Fembot00. Like, I already knew at 12 that I needed to be sexy and have like a sexy persona, and that I could have that not in life, but on the screen. And that I could trick people, and including myself. So I did that, and that's how I got I think I got one boyfriend out of it. We never met. He sent me a letter in the mail with his photo, and I didn't like it. I got scared. Then I went to college, where now everyone had an email address and a laptop and a phone, not even a smartphone yet, but we could text message. So it became really easy to have all of your conversations via text, and to be as intimate as you wanted to be via text, when you're really just sitting alone in a room talking to yourself, getting feedback sometimes, but it wasn't even necessary. Like, it was necessary for dopamine. And I became like addicted to the chemical rush. I became addicted to who I was when I was writing.
Yeah.
I became addicted to trying to win this dating competition I felt that I was in, that the internet facilitated, which was convince someone to love me using my powers of persuasion, my grammatical acumen, and my big vocabulary. And
your screen name. Your hot screen name.
Well, that time I had abandoned my screen names. We didn't have them anymore. I just had an email address with my first name and my last name. So I had to pretend that Elissa Bassist was Victoria's Secret Angel. And I could seduce in a text message and in an email in a way that like I could never in a million years in person. Like, I felt like I did every sexual position online, and then offline I hadn't even like put my mouth on somebody. Like, there was just like such a disconnect there in what I was saying and feeling, and then like doing. And in many ways it felt so much safer. I could be so extreme in how I felt. I could be so vocal. I could be someone I wasn't. And then it always came crashing down whenever I was in person. And that felt so sad. I felt like I didn't know how to communicate in person. I felt at a loss for words. I felt like I didn't know what my personality was, who I was. I never even liked the person in person. I loved them so much as a figment of my imagination and as someone who I was talking at. But then when they talked to me, I was like, this isn't as good. Like, can we get behind a screen and continue this conversation elsewhere?
Wow.
I'm worried about Gen Z. What's going to happen to them now? They communicate purely through TikTok.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And so the writing, in a way, it's how you honed your voice as a writer, but it was the wrong voice. It was kind of a warped voice, would you say?
Yeah, like it's weird. Like it was a bad voice to be in a relationship, but it was a great voice to become a writer. I really felt like what I was falling in love with was writing and expressing, but that I had the wrong audience because I would be punished for saying too much. Like I would get ghosted, I would get dumped, and then I would be very sad. But at the time of writing, I felt my most alive, and I felt like I was like writing my biography as I was living it, and just I'm not sure I would have become a writer without it. Like I remember always wanting to write when I was in elementary school and writing stories about my mom's many marriages and divorces and posting them on classroom walls. So I was always very into it, but I don't know if I would have had felt the same like life or death feeling that the internet made me feel.
Right. And in real time, like in the moment, you're getting the dopamine, as you say. Yeah.
And it was such a performance because I was auditioning for love. I was trying to seduce via text, and so I was putting my best, worst self out there. And I think if I had been typing into a Word document, I could have written about 12 novels and they all would have been incredible bestsellers, erotic thrillers. They would have been awesome, but they instead just went to one person who didn't want them. Like they were just very misdirected creative energies. Like, I don't feel like you should write to your muse. You should just use your muse to write. And I didn't know how to do that. And I don't think any of us do. I was never thinking like these emails could be a career until about like 10 years after I had like 10,000 emails. And I was like, this is better served in a book than To Fuck Taco.
Yeah.
So I hope has read the book.
Well, you know, it makes me think about how we are sometimes our best when we're not in love with the person, you know, who's going to love us back, but when we're trying out for someone out of our league or someone really challenging, right? And that it can bring out your, maybe not the self your friends and your family would like, they, you know, or maybe even not the real you, but the wittier, brighter, smarter, faster, sharper, sexy yourself. And it makes me think around this time that you were doing this, Chris Kraus published I Love Dick, which was, you know, her novel later made into a TV show by Joey Soloway. And I think you reference it in the book. And I want to ask you too at some point, because you're such a pop culture maven and you know so much about kind of what is bad for us to watch, what kind of increases what you term, one of my favorite lines in the book is the acid memories and hideous feelings that taint the soul. And I think that's a feeling a lot of people know well. I know it really well as a dating woman, you know, when I was, you know, looking for love and being someone who isn't you, you know, and then sort of coming up against the reality of your imagination and expectations and hopes, and you've seduced this thing, now you're, back at your dorm or your apartment or whatever. And one of the really moving moments in your book is when you talk about women talking about their rapes and saying, well, it wasn't a back alley rape, it was just it was a kind of, cocktail party rape or some different kind of rape. Yeah. There's maybe a space between those two things, between your younger self texting furiously, or and really entering the illness and the darker side of relationships. Could you talk a little about sort of how it the trajectory kind of went faster and sharper?
Yeah, so when you mentioned the acid memories and the hideous feelings, so I think that's what other people call our emotions and our memories. Like, to me now, those are our superpower, and it is what makes us distinctly us, and so human and so deep and wonderful is how much we can feel and how we express that feeling. And but in a patriarchy, that's turned against us and it's used against us, and we buy into that bullshit that it's our downfall as opposed to our power. And so when I started to believe that, and when I believed that because, again, I was being punished for saying what I felt, and punishment at the time was someone withholds their love and they don't love you how you want to be loved, and you decide, and they say in so many words, and society says it's because you said too much, you felt too much, you said too much about how much you were feeling, you said the wrong thing, you were too much, too big, you didn't bite your tongue, and all of that. So I learned to do all of those things because I didn't want to be punished. And then what I was doing to myself was punishing myself, not recognizing it. So then compounding that punishment with blame, guilt, stigma, shame, and the whole while making myself sick and unable to stand up for myself, advocate for myself, and really just invite anybody to come and walk all over me, hurt me as they please, because I had this outsized fear of being unloved, that I would rather be loved and hurt than safe and unloved. Again, patriarchy is a sickness that makes us all sick. So I just learned to stay quiet, to not say anything that would provoke, frustrate, instigate a fight. I was so afraid of getting into a fight. I was so afraid of getting angry. I was so afraid of being called crazy or psycho or a bitch. And it was so easy to be called those things. So you really have to take a lot out of your vocabulary and squash a lot of your personality and your reactions and behaviors so that you avoid being called any of the above. And so I just got it contributed to my mental illness, being unable to express myself, then literally into physical illness, which I didn't believe could happen because I'm a feminist and I know hysteria is fake. Only later did I learn that the mind-body connection is real, and that our emotions impact our immune system, and stress can make us sick in ways that we could never imagine, and it can prolong our sickness because we can't articulate what we need to in doctor's offices. I felt like I was just willing to do whatever a doctor said and bite my tongue because I didn't want to annoy them, and they knew everything and I knew nothing, and I was so desperate for their help, and again so vulnerable, and needed them to like me and to treat me. So I wouldn't say no, I'm uncomfortable with that. Or if I did, they would brush that off, and then I would be like, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. do whatever. And then I had a few near-death experiences because of that. So I don't recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. And all out of needing them to like you. And it kind of begins with AOL and moves into the text messages that you are learning how to make people like you, I mean, we're all doing that, right? And then you also talk a lot about the culture that the pop culture that you consume, the media, the books, the movies. And I really, I've been noticing it since I read your book. I just was listening in the radio today about critics' picks of the best movies of the year, and noticing how many of the themes and tropes that you identify are in the movies that we're all just sort of mindlessly consuming all the time, which is why patriarchy isn't as much a problem for men, and especially white men, as it is for the rest of us who are also part of it and also made of it, right? I wonder if you could analyze a little bit the media and culture of your time, and how it influenced you in ways that maybe you're the first generation for that to happen to, that it's so available, so streaming. You don't even have to all be sitting down as a family on TV watching one thing. You can consume as much as you want of a certain kind of story. And maybe just a little of what you consumed and how it affected you, for better and worse.
Yeah, so I grew up on must-see dead girl TV. So that was like so many television shows with dead girls, raped women, abducted teenagers. It was impossible to avoid, such that when I was younger, I truly believed that women lost their virginity through date rape. I thought a virginity was taken from you. You lost it and it was taken. And I was already scheming on how to avoid rape. And I had plans that I was like, I'm going to pee on my rapist. I'm going to tell my rapist I have AIDS. Like, this was like a child's thought. And I can't even believe it. So, and it's like, and if I weren't watching TV, wouldn't have mattered, because I subscribed to Cosmo, the international magazine for women, that told me 69 ways to bend over backwards and let a man finish his sentences for you. So I was getting it from that, but I was also really smart, and I read a lot of books. As you can see, I read many of these books. They're not just for show. And my favorite book in high school was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. It was such a long book, and the sex scenes were really rape scenes, but I couldn't figure that out at the time. I just was bombarded by messages that a woman should be taken violently, should consent to be taken violently, that violence was integral to eroticism, that violence was just the name of the game, and we had to either love it or love it. So it was too much of a coincidence that I was getting this from 90210, Cosmo, Ayn Rand, that I was reading mostly books by men about men where they ravaged women. Women had very few words. They were always wives, girlfriends, dead, married. That's like the only thing that they were doing. And that was like all we could aspire to, or we could aspire to, if not a wife or a girlfriend, to be like a man and act like a man, and be one of the guys, which means like hating women. And so I hated women for like a very long time, and I still feel like I'm shaking that off, because I just had these like knee-jerk reactions. Like, I'll just be watching whatever, award-winning prestige television or garbage television, and I'm like, bitch, shut up. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm just like, die. And I'm like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where I'm like rooting for a woman's wounds, and it makes it really easy for my own self to hurt, at least to not complain about it, because I'm like, well, this is expected. And this is just like what I see all the time, and this is what women do. And it's not ending. Like, for all the awareness that we have now, for it being the year 2022, for the revolutions we've had with hashtags, Me Too, the feminist awakenings, like, there's the backlash to the backlash to the backlash. Like like the patriarchy just like double downs. Like we are seeing Hollywood, they had like a brief moment where they were going to do better, but now they're back to their old tricks. They're canceling a lot of non-white male driven television shows, films. So we're still getting the same story over and over and over again. That doesn't only glorify white men, but it really demonizes everyone else. And not only demonizes, but dehumanizes, which makes it really easy to invalidate those people in real life, invalidate their stories, their voices, their perspective, whether we're conscious of it or not. And I think a lot of us aren't conscious of it. And that's the problem. And that's why I felt like I had to call it out in every area that I experienced it, because it's everywhere all the time and it isn't getting better.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the CIIS test for media, and particularly I think as advice to writers and people who enjoy books and movies and television, how to maybe think about that differently and not sort of unintentionally fill yourself with more misogyny. But first, I hope you don't mind if I share a little bit of the Margaret Atwood quote that you gave me the other day. It's so incredible. It's from The Robber Bride, and I've truncated a little bit, but Margaret Atwood, of course, wrote The Handmaid's Tale, writes, male fantasies is everything run by male fantasies. Even pretending you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur.
So good, so good. Before I even read that line, I was feeling it. I remember feeling it when after the 2016 election, I signed up for a self-defense class because I would not be caught dead walking around the world without training. And I put on mascara for this self-defense class, which I think is full-blown patriarchy. And I was just like, patriarchy, misogyny, like it is everywhere. It is in the bathroom with me right now. It is in my eyeballs. It is in my movements. Like it is such an unconscious thing that follows me everywhere. And it is not a matter of not watching this or reading this. It is like undoing lifetimes of socialization and like rewiring your brain and having the awareness, first of all, that your brain's wired a certain way.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that you have to like really do a lot of work to brainwash yourself.
Exactly. And I mean, we don't have time for all of the conversations, but even in writing the book and publishing the book, how many times you're sort of confronting people telling you how to be and how to sort of fit into a pre-existing mold. But there's so much of it in the book. And I want to make sure that we get to, kind of, I think in this audience, probably there are quite a few psychologists and quite a few writers, maybe a few philosophers. And I think for people who are really thinking about how do I become a maker of cultural products that aren't reifying patriarchy, how can we do it when we're made of it? And maybe you could just speak to the Alison Bechdel's famous test for media to sort of to assess whether you're just watching more patriarchal stuff come at you mindlessly, and then share the Bassist test as models. And I think these are really important, Elissa, because I think everyone should write down the Bassist test and just walk around with it on a note card for a week and notice, how often you're experiencing something that is actually reifying misogyny in your body, in your mind, in your psyche. And can you change that as you write, as you make things, as you even make choices about what you're going to watch or read?
Yes. So the Bechdel test is a very simple, straightforward test, which is if you're consuming anything, first, are there two women in it who are named? So they're not like blonde number 2, waitress number 7. They have names. I think it's probably even first names are fine. Then are these two women talking to each other? And then are these two women talking to each other about anything other than a man? And most movies and TV shows fail the Bechdel test. Like more than half of Academy Award winners for Best Picture failed the Bechdel test. And we're all feminists are very aware of the Bechdel test, and still it's hilarious how often it fails in what we're watching. And I feel like there are so many directors, storytellers who have come up with their own tests. Like there's easily like the Soloway test that I've cribbed from, where when I'm watching something, I want, are there multiple genders featured, not just a straight white man? I can't watch the straight white male anti-hero anymore. And I have loved them. They've been my number one favorite go-to. Love Tony Soprano, love Michael Scott. I love them. I was, obsessed with them. I can quote them, but I ended up in many bad spots, which you'll read about if you read my book. So loving them didn't get me very far in my life. So are there multiple genders? Are people of different genders, backgrounds, ethnicities, races in charge, in power? Are they giving us, do they have like a rich story, a background? Are they something more than just a prop? Because usually they're just a prop or a stereotype, or they're there to serve the white male protagonist, either to be like the butt of his joke, to help him pull off some vigilante spectacular bank heist, to just like add in a few lines, but they don't have lives of their own. So I try to watch that kind of stuff, and not just watch, of course, like I try to read. I don't think I've read a book by a white man in a really long time. And it's not about not reading books by white men. Of course, hashtag not all white men. It's just that I have read so much already. I've read a lifetime's worth that I'm ready to have all of these other perspectives. And what I'm saying to do, the opposite of it is the norm. So if I sound cuckoo bananas, or like a militant feminazi, like that again is just like your unconscious bias playing you. And we are given this like one storyline our whole lives. And there are so many diverse stories. And this is why we must use our voices, and why we've been convinced not to, because they've been so invalidated, so dismissed, so ridiculed, so silenced, so punished. So we don't hear them, and we're afraid of using them. And, I'm a writing teacher, and a lot of my students have these ingrained beliefs that nobody cares what they have to say. Nobody cares what they've experienced. Nobody's interested in their perspective. Their stories by default are stupid, mortifying, not heroic, so on and so forth. And I constantly have to give them permission that like writing about your feelings, that's interesting. Like writing about your perspective as a teacher is fascinating. I am interested in all of that, and I want to read about it because it's what the world's missing. It's what I haven't been reading. How you have lived your life, what you have suffered through, what you have overcome, how your own unique sense of humor. Like, I'm so hungry for that. And I think so many of us are. Many of us maybe just might not know it. But these stories, they're not highlighted in our culture. They're not given a platform. They're not given money. They're not revered. They're not reviewed. So it's easy to convince yourself that you don't like it, you don't want to produce it, but that's all bullshit. And all I want to do is read these essays by my students who have been silenced their whole lives because they have the most interesting stuff to say. They have the most revolutionary stuff to say because they haven't been allowed to say it, and nobody has, and we haven't heard it. And it just, it upsets me, the stories we tell ourselves that are just reselling the bullshit we've been sold to our own selves, and it's all bullshit.
So you're advocating here again for the acid memories and hideous feelings that taint the soul to become the gold that really draws together a wider, more expansive humanity.
That's all I want. I want acid memories and hideous feelings that taint the soul. I want like books to come out that are just about that. I want to read all about it. That's what I'm just like hungry for. And it's like, and as consumers, we have so much power. And that's probably why we've been so duped for so long, because they know we have so much power. Like they want our money, they want our attention, they want our energy, they want our clicks, our eyeballs. And we can seek out other stuff. It's definitely there. People are writing it. Small presses are publishing it. It just takes a while to find it. It's not on social media. It's not in the New York Times. It's maybe not in a movie theater, but it's all around us. Like there's great stuff happening in just communities. Like I've always loved, especially when I've been in college and in grad school, the stuff that's going on there, like the genius that's happening there in these like smaller scale productions, in these zines, chapbooks, open mics, like people are saying and creating awesome stuff, but it's not on Netflix.
And it's something.
Sorry, Netflix, I love you.
Could you maybe give a few examples of television, books, movies that you feel are, that we might have heard of or we might seek out, that people might seek out, that you feel are tending in this direction?
Yes, I'm trying to think of things I've been like watching lately. I really love Never Have I Ever, which is one of Mindy Kaling's shows that is on Netflix, and it's so good. And it's actually it's like been renewed with it, which is shocking. It's one of those shows that you think would be canceled right away, but it has 3 perfect, glorious seasons. I love that one very much. I love We Are Lady Parts on Peacock, which is the offshoot of NBC, unfortunate name. I really like this show called Ghost that's on HBO through the UK, and I think on CBS, the American version. That's very fun and has like a great ensemble cast that's diverse and pushing boundaries. Pushing boundaries is just like just telling other people's perspectives. That's funny to me. Anyway, anything Joey Soloway makes is great. That's I Love Dick, Afternoon Delight, their first feature film. Of course, a little Transparent, though that became mired in controversy. What else? I mean, I'm reading like a great book called She's Nice Though by Mia Mercado, which is all about how women, particularly Asian women, are supposed to be nice and how that's so limiting. Like niceness is another form of silence. And she is just the funniest writer who is also so keen and has such great insights and such a great, wonderful, fresh perspective. Like her book is my antidepressant. I read it every night in the darkness of 4 p.m. Because it's so great, and it's a great tragic comedy. I could go on forever. If anybody ever wants my list of TV shows and books, I have a long one. You can just email me, which is my first name dot my last name at gmail.com, elissabassist.com. I'll email you my list. Because I have to be writing it all down or else I will forget it. And I want the evidence that the shows exist. And Emily Nussbaum on Twitter, she's a great person to follow on Twitter because she champions a lot of great storytelling shows that are dismissed. And she writes so smartly about them. I mean, she got the Pulitzer Prize for writing about TV, which is, I think, the coolest thing that's ever happened in the world.
Great, great. Reservation Dogs comes to mind too, an all Indigenous writers' room. You know, amazing stories that I think until they're told, like life on the res, what it's really like, and the smallness in some ways, and the vastness of history that it encapsulates, and yet it was snubbed at the Oscars, I believe. You know, just completely snubbed. But coming back for another season, but incredible stories, right?
Incredible. And that is the funniest show. That's always one of my go-tos.
Hilarious.
And I just forgot. Yeah, it's season 2 just wrapped, devastating finale. But that show is so full of heart and jokes. And yeah, I give that show all the Grammys, all the Academy Awards, and all the Emmys.
Well, I think it does something that you reference a lot, and maybe you could speak about a little bit. I think that the connection between depressing, oppressive circumstances and humor, and rage and humor, humor as an antidepressant. Maybe you could speak about that.
Yeah, well, okay, so everything is fucked up, right? And what do you do about that? Like, I just find when there's nothing to laugh about, then you can laugh about anything. Like when you're at that point of desolation and tragedy, that things become hilarious in their absurdity and in how we ridicule them and in how we talk about them. Like I just saw the funniest TikTok, which was a satire of how the New York Times writes about and treats trans people. And it was just like such a scathing, perfect parody of how it's like, just asking questions. Do trans people, are they really people? Just asking questions. Like, let's ask these white supremacists for their opinions. Just asking questions. And it's just like I just, when someone is doing something so bad, but it's so acceptable, I find the only way to appropriately call it out is to make fun of it and to mock it. And it just illustrates the social, professional, societal sin so well when you can ridicule it and you can take it down by imitating it and not reproducing the racism and the transphobia, but like by imitating it is to just show us how bad it is, how absurd it is, how ridiculous it is. And we listen to a joke over a sob story or a rant or an accusation or a think piece. Like I have so much hope for Gen Z because I love their sense of humor and the way that they can like package their angst and their rage in really funny, entertaining ways that like get across the same point in a way that everybody can hear it. And when you're being entertained, you can be like tricked. And then that goes both ways. You can be tricked into dehumanizing people subconsciously, or you can be tricked into being like, the New York Times is being transphobic and I'm going to unsubscribe to that bullshit because it's not okay. And that information was so cleverly packaged and delivered and persuasive. And I laughed the whole time. And it's great and stuck with me and I'll never forget it.
Great. So humor is subversive too, right? You can take these templates as you've talked about and use them against the patriarchy, against the sort of institutions that are reifying misogyny and transphobia and things like that. You have, so we promised the 3 takeaways from your book. So you've talked about the power of writing, the power of telling real, authentic, raw stories. The more dangerous, the better, the acid memories and the hideous feelings that taint the soul. And then we've talked about the Bassist test, which is, are there people of other genders? Are they in power? Are they numerous? And then the last one is about the power of quitting, saying no, subverting expectations, just not doing what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And can you talk about how that's come forward in your own life? It was really one of the main pivot points of your healing, right?
Yes. So I felt like I never learned how to say no. I learned how to say yes in 1,000 different languages and in 8 different octaves, and could moan yes, but could never simply state no, because to say no was to be a bitch. It's rude. It's like emotional terrorism. Like, no has such a bad rap, and for a very good reason. There's something known as rejection violence, where there are statistics that every year, many women and basically non-white men are murdered for saying no, for trying to get out of a relationship, for not wanting to have a romantic experience with a man. That men go on shooting sprees for this all the time. This is what incels do. This is what regular domestic terrorists and abusers do. So no is scary and difficult for a reason. But usually no, it is not, you're not going to be punished for it. Like, and I've noticed this the more that I've said it, because I was always afraid, oh my God, if I say like no to the handyman, like, no, I can't let you use my bathroom when my dog's in there hiding from you, scared to death, that he, isn't going to help me. He's going to tell the landlord about me. My mind just like jumps to the worst possible conclusion. If I tell the landlord no, that he can't take a poop in my toilet because I'm protecting my dog, then I'll be evicted. Okay. So, and I think like our fear system has been so attuned that we do have that worst case scenario fear if we're rude, or we say no, or we're not nice, or we don't smile, or we don't indulge, placate, compliment, and so on. But the more I say it, there's no consequences. I end up getting what I want. And I just feel like I'm in my power, and that I can actually get done what I need to get done. And I'm not mad at myself, because when I don't say no, there's all this punishment that happens. Like, I do get in situations I don't want to be in. I do get hurt. I do feel like I have no agency. I don't feel like I can trust myself. I get really frustrated. I waste a lot of time being frustrated, mad at myself and no one else. But now I can say it and know that no is a complete sentence, and that it's not going to be the end of the world if I say it 20 times a day in mundane situations that seem mundane. But to me, I'm rewiring my brain. I'm building my confidence. I'm building trust in myself. I'm just feeling better and better that I'm in control of my own life, and that I'm not at the mercy of someone else's whims, and that I don't have to sacrifice myself in order to make someone else not mad at me or feel more comfortable. Or I just was always forgetting that I was a person in every single situation, and prioritizing the other person, like their wants, needs, feelings mattered infinitely more than mine. And these are like complete strangers most of the time. It's like someone on a plane, like, can I get your bag for you? And no, I don't want you to. Like, my dog's in my bag. I don't touch my bag. Like, so much of it comes down to my dog. Protecting my dog is really important to me. So I suggest getting a dog if you want to learn how to say no. Yeah, but it's also just like building the muscle for like, the more I say it, the more it becomes second nature. And then the more I'm just like, I trust the words that are coming out of my mouth, the more I'm saying what I'm thinking, the more I feel like I can handle myself in like bigger situations, and know that I don't have to be as afraid as I always am. Like, I'm rewiring my fear system at the same time, which I write a lot about in the book, because our fear system and our immune systems, they're so complicated and so delicate, and like learning about them, I had no idea how much they affect us in our daily life, and how much our feelings and what we say and what we do affects our internal system so much. There's so much going on in the body. It's a magical thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. The saying no, I mean, you seem so confident. You've had all of these experiences. You can say no. You finished your book, which took 12 years to write. And I wonder if you could just describe a little bit, I didn't know you 12 years ago, how you've changed over that time, or how you're different now than you were through the process actually of writing the book.
I mean, 12 years ago, I mean, even like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, let's say, I just remember feeling so afraid, so anxious, so paralyzed. Like, I just had this picture of me, like, just like being barely able to move because I was so afraid that I would make the wrong choice, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, get in trouble, piss off some dude. And then my like world just felt so small, and I was just felt like I was like in this cage of my own making, and I had no idea how I was ever gonna get out of that and walk through the world. And then I watched a lot of horror movies where women were eviscerated. So that's how I coped with it. And it was only through so much therapy that, and really the right therapy for me, because I was, it took me a really long time to get the diagnosis that fit. I went through a few, the regulars, depression, anxiety, and then I got the one that was my one true diagnosis, which was a obsessive compulsive disorder, which was shocking because I didn't wash my hands an absurd amount. But I, of course, had a really limited understanding of OCD and of mental illness in general, because we really only know what we know from TV, which is like a mockery of mental illness and mental health, physical health, everything. So once I got that and I could get the proper treatment for that, and a lot of it was me rewiring my fear system, as I said earlier. And this fear, which is primitive, our fear system learns from behavior. So no matter how much you know better, how much you know as a women and gender and sexuality studies, they've now expanded it, so it's so long. Women, gender, and sexuality studies major, or a feminist or an academic, it doesn't matter how much you know and can tell people, because your body knows more and it will act in ways that you don't tell it to. So I had to rewire my fear system in order for me to get out of my own way and put life in its proper perspective and know that everything that I was afraid of was, again, patriarchy. Where's the horror movie about patriarchy? I'd love to see it. I'm sure it's happened in a few forms, but I would like more of it. But it had so duped me into being afraid of everything. I mean, it's so effective. And it just really got me. And I had to unlearn all of that, go through everything that I had been taught and read and believed about the world and about myself and about other people, and challenge it and find these alternatives, which are very minor in many ways. It's, again, consuming different stories, learning how to say no, and not apologizing for it. Like, oh my God, we all have to unlearn how to apologize. That's going to be a big one. So yeah, I'm perfect now. I've reached my highest truest self. I'm done. No more work. Just kidding. I obviously have to relearn these lessons all the time, every day. I wake up and experience total amnesia, and I'm like, who am I? It's hard because, of course, we live in this world that hasn't caught up to our consciousness and to our therapy sessions, and not everything in our everyday lives that we're constantly reacting to, our therapy isn't accessible in those moments. And we see how much sexism and misogyny and racism is alive and thriving. And that's very scary, how dedicated people are to their phobias and their biases. And there's just so much fighting we have to do collectively, but also personally on the level of regaining these words that make you feel in control of your own lives, validating our stories and telling them over and over and over again until people listen to us, until we listen to ourselves, until we find the people who do listen and learn to ignore the people who don't listen. And getting more dogs, adopting all the dogs.
Great. I'm going to go to the audience questions in just a moment, but I wanted to ask you, I'm curious to know what you're working on now, if you're working on a new project.
I am doing that. So for teaching, because I'm a Virgo, I have hundreds of handouts where I tell my students exactly how to do everything I think they should be doing. So I'm turning those handouts into a craft book on humor and satire writing so that you can be funny in your most traumatic storytelling moments, because it's been so profound and powerful for me. And as someone who just like loves jokes and has studied jokes for so long, I would love to teach other people how to joke, because it's really not, it's not so hard. You don't have to be born with a sense of humor. You don't have to be naturally funny. There are so many tricks that you can employ in your writing and performing, and it's whatever you're writing, your novels, your dating profiles, your emails, your letters to your landlord. And like, humor has just saved my life. Laughing has been like one of the biggest cures for me. I'm so grateful to everyone who has made me laugh, and I just want to contribute as much as I can in what I know about jokes to help the world, to heal the world through laughter.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So laughter, and then the first question from the audience is kind of the opposite. What was the most challenging part about writing the book?
Oh, writing the book, period, full stop. Writing is so hard. Sitting in a chair and turning off your inner critic and just getting words on the page that humiliate you and that you don't want Aunt Janie to read. It's very difficult to do that every day for hours a day, and to think that you got to make it good enough that people are going to buy it and write you good reviews. It was a real mindfuck. Like the physical act of articulating your experience and turning it into beautiful prose and a song that heals the broken heart. That's hard, but the hardest part for me was really shutting my own self up, shutting up that inner critic, which was really just a medley of all my haters telling me that I shouldn't do what I was doing, so that I could actually do what I was doing. And I did it. But it's still like every day I have to do it. It's not like I can turn them off for good. Those voices always come back with a vengeance, and I'm always just like, I don't even tell them to shut up, like, because I learned in OCD therapy, which really helped me with my writer's block. I tell them, I just like agree with them. I'm like, yeah, maybe this is humiliating. Maybe nobody will like it. And then I just write anyway. Instead of working so hard to shut it down, which you're never going to be able to do, agreeing with it just neutralizes it so that I can type. And I love writing. And it's really easy to get into like an abusive relationship with writing, like where you're against your own self and you're beating down your own self. And like, that's so much of the work of writing, is getting out of that, because I think we all, if we write, we love to write. And it is difficult, but we still love it, and we are alive because of it, and it gives us every reason in the world and all the purpose we need and all the love we need. Like, that's how writing can feel. And it's just getting into a better relationship with yourself in order to get to that spot.
Great advice. Who are your favorite authors, or who are authors who help you, whose writing helps you?
I love Samantha Irby. She's the funniest. She is so stylish and self-deprecating. I love everything she writes about. She writes about like IBS. She writes about like the most disgusting bodily functions as the most human experiences that can be elevated to prose and just be like just a laugh riot. I think she's really great. I really love Straight White Man George Saunders. He's very funny, very dark. Very funny. I love Lori Moore is also very funny, very dark. I mentioned Mia Mercado, funny, dark. Those are my favorite writers. Alice Munro, Melissa Broder. I'm just like checking out like my bookshelf behind me so that I can cheat. Yes. Who I'm trying to think of, like, I've been reading so many medical memoirs that I write about in the book. And I was just reading last night Invisible Kingdom by Megan O'Rourke, which is about autoimmune disease. And it has been like the best book of 2022 on every single list. And I was noticing that she only, for the most part, I would say 90% quotes white men. And I remember in writing my own book how that's what I was doing too, because that's who have written and have authority and have resources and everything. And then I went to go rewrite the book where I was only quoting women, writers of color, and trying to quote as few white men as possible. Again, not because I hate them, but just because they've already had their say times a million, and I want to hear other voices and other perspectives and validate them. I'm doing God's work. So I was just like noticing that she was doing that, and you can't not, because they did do all of the discoveries in medicine, but it was just like so flagrant to me when I was reading it. But it's a great book.
Thank you. Thank you. How did your family and friends receive Hysterical when it was published?
They read it, which I never wanted them to do. I think you need to write as if your family were illiterate and they were never going to read your book. I could not have written what I wrote if I imagined they were going to read it. And I remember thinking of them as I was writing, where I was like, I pray that Uncle Donnie does never see this sentence. And then they all read it, which I'm very thankful for the support, but also gross, weird. My uncle calls my chapter, Why I Didn't Say No, the pornographic chapter, which I appreciate that he could have a sense of humor about it. And they've all like mentioned it to me. They've been so kind. I've actually completely lucked out. Like, I feared that they would be sad, if not mad, and they just seem to be like delighted because they love me so much. That was really great. I'm like, what incredible human beings. Could have gone a totally other way, and maybe they talk shit in private, who knows. But they've been very nice about it. I think my mom in particular truly understands that I'm an artist and that I have taken experiences and crafted them and dramatized them and have taken them to like another level where like I'm trying to elicit a strong emotional reaction. I'm trying to twist the knife. I'm trying to make this painful. I'm trying to make it excruciating. I'm trying to make it entertaining, outrageous, and doing all these things. And she appreciates that, like, my telling of the story is not the story itself, is not the situation. And she is really into that. And I think like she's spreading that information to the rest of the family. Like, Elissa is a writer. Like, this is not her diary. You know, she has purposely worked on these scenes and is trying to say something bigger than that she gives a lot of blowjobs.
How you answered a question like this a moment ago, but maybe you can take another stab at it if you want to. How would you describe yourself now? Because this also has a compliment in it. How are you a different, healthier, emancipated, empowered human than the patriarchal programmed girl who was trying to audition for love? And what helped you most to wake up?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Whoever wrote that is a writer. What helped me to wake up? Well, truly just the awareness of how fucked up everything is around us. I guess that's taking like the red pill in Matrix terms, which is like a real doodly thing for me to say. So just like being aware of it's really important, because then I can always remind myself, like if I get really sucked in and feel really bad after I've doom scrolled or watched something where all the girls die, I can be like, you know, this is a carefully curated patriarchal live stream that is feeding us all of these lies. And I actually, like, I don't need to watch it. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to worry about it. Like, I don't need this to be a part of my reality. Like, I can pay attention to something else. I can do something else. I can think something else. I never thought I could think anything else than what I was thinking. And what I was thinking was always like very negative, because I was just really attached to my negativity. And I was just really attached to the reality that was in front of my face, never thinking that I got a choice in the matter, even though, of course we do. Like, we choose to open Twitter, we choose to follow who we follow, we choose.
Right.
At some point, it becomes not a choice, because we're just like sucked in and face plant into the screen and just become like a machine to the machine. So I have to like stop myself before I get into that. But just being aware of that and talking back to myself about it just like helps on every kind of basis. And it's like I consume news differently. I consume everything differently, knowing that I get to choose the perspective I'm hearing from. And that just changes the game so totally. I just listen to very nice podcasts that's just of like women's voices, you know, because I wrote in the book that I had to fall in love with the female voice because I had hated it, been taught to hate it, hated my own for so long that I'm now actively trying to reprogram myself. I'm trying to do a Clockwork Orange on my own self. And when I choose differently, I feel differently. And, you know, how many choices we make a day? Like a million. So it's a lot of work all the time. And I fail a lot and have to like bring myself back from the brink a lot. And I also have to let myself have the bouts of depression and the panic attacks that come. Like, just knowing that when you're an emotional person, you're gonna feel all of the feelings, and you're not just gonna feel the happy ones. Even though you have like a better handle on your emotions, you're still gonna feel it all. And I just let myself feel and know, and I don't get mad at myself for feeling or fucking up or disbelieving and getting like sucked into the bullshit. I mean, it's there to suck you in. What are you gonna do?
Thank you. And thank you, Marion, for that terrific question. Here's another related. I experience terrifying fear whenever I try to write academically in a way that honors who I am while holding the reality that it's academic. I break down and cry, and my brain tends to go numb and blank, and I'm just overwhelmed by the task. What are some of the best, most efficient ways to navigate this fear of speaking, this fear of having a voice?
Oh yeah, I feel that so deeply. I actually just got goosebumps. Yeah. So academic writing is hard because it involves having authority, and it involves being an expert and having expertise and not apologizing for it. And that is not something we are told to have. That it's not something that is natural. I would say after all of our conditioning, it doesn't feel natural. So, you know, I have to trick myself when I feel that level of pressure to produce a certain way. Like, I have white page paralysis. I cannot just start typing in a Word document because of that fear and anxiety and all the voices that rush in telling me can't and idiot. So a lot of my writing I have to do in ways that are low stakes. So maybe it begins as an email, as a text message, a G-chat. I write about it in a journal, just something that doesn't have any pressure attached to it, because the pressure is what is getting in the way of the writing. It's not your ability to write. It's not your ability to think, formulate thoughts, articulate those thoughts. It's just the anxiety. And I had to learn how to cure my anxiety. And, you know, I thought it was always writer's block, but it was really anxiety for me. And it sounds like for you too, because if it's fear you're feeling, that's what it is. I have to like turn off the internet. I use these blocker apps, Freedom 2, self-control, because if nothing helps me feel bad better than the internet. So I have to turn that off. I have to read any number of these books that I love so much that make me feel inspired, that make me feel happy to be alive. Like I have to pregame before I write. So I have to, again, read books, research my topic, get really like pumped up to write, because I'm excited about the ideas and I'm having thoughts and feelings in reaction to what I'm reading. I can't just like start from nothing. I have to start from a place of like being a fan and of reacting to something that's like making me think in a different way, feel in a different way. I also like to watch television that does that for me. Again, that's where my viewing list comes in very handy. Whether I'm writing like academically or not, I like television. Watching TV is writing, I think. So those are a few of my hacks, and of, again, agreeing to the fear that I sound stupid, just so that I get out of my own way and can get words down. Because once I have these words down, then I can ask for help. That's something else I learned, is you can ask a friend to read your writing, to tell you what isn't working, to help you think through a process. I journal, like I extensively outline. I was showing my students my outlines the other day, because when I'm trying to figure out what I am trying to write, I need to have like these conversations with myself. Like, these are just like, what am I trying to say? They're not like meticulous notes or anything like that. It's just like me having a written conversation with myself in rainbow colored, different colored pens, because I love to use all these different colored pens and try to make it fun for me. And so, yeah, you lean into the fear, like maybe this will sound stupid. Maybe people will make fun of me for it. And then you keep going, and then you come back, you revise, you do a bunch of drafts. You have a shitty first draft where, again, the stakes could not be lower. And the pressure is just off. I love the Pomodoro method, where I write for 25 minutes and take a break. Then I come back for another 25 more minutes. There's so much more I can get done in 25 minutes than if I had 8 hours. Again, these are anxiety hacks. And then in the revision, then I add more research. I can make it smarter the more I read other people, and they help me have other ideas. And I need to do that research. So I have like 20 drafts of something, and it just gets smarter and smarter, then stupider, dumber, bad, terrible. Then I'm back on track, and I give myself the space to waste a lot of time, write a lot of nonsense, and then to edit it, come back later. So those are all my tips and tricks that I hope will work for you.
Great advice. I love the image of a dissertation coming out in a text thread, like written to like your mom or your dog, or I don't know, whoever. It's great.
Well, it's great to have like an imagined audience in mind. Like when I have a Word document, I have no audience in mind. It's just sort of like panel of everybody who's ever hated me. Like that's kind of what comes to mind. But in an email, if it's like an email to someone like I'm trying to impress, or it's like a friend, I'm just trying to entertain them, I'm just trying to explain something, I'm just trying to be clear.
Right.
Like those imagined audiences help me really say what I want to say, and in more of my own voice. And my own voice and when I'm trying to just like simplify, I sound a lot smarter than when I'm trying to sound smart.
Right. Great tips. We have 2 more questions. The next one is from Lavon. Listening tonight, I was thinking of the quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, a favorite author of mine. Writers aren't exactly people. They're a whole bunch of people trying to be one person. I'm wondering if it resonates with you. Thank you so much for your lovely and inspiring prose. I hope it leads to another book on how we can advocate for the voiceless.
Yes, love F. Scott Fitzgerald. He has an incredible collection of essays called The Crack Up that I highly recommend, because he had a lot of insecurity and he's really vulnerable and honest about it, which is my favorite. Yeah, we have a million different personalities. We have, like, I sort of think, again, this is about the flaw and the superpower and switching those up. Like, there's so much about me that I always thought made me like unlovable, but actually is really killer in a classroom and as an author and as a creative person, where it's like the fact that I can talk too much or be bossy works really well in a classroom. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I can harness these personalities that I've tried to hide and make dormant, and that I can actually utilize them and know that my teacher self is different from my friend self. My therapist and I used to talk about my Bill Murray self. That was like myself who I write about Bill Murray and the interaction we had in the book, where I was like very confident. I explained rape culture to him unabashedly. I was very drunk. And like being that self versus like my fetal position depressed self. And the therapist was always kind of trying to get me to be more the Bill Murray self. Well, I was kind of like, I just want to let myself, I just want to like be them all, and know that like I have them all for different reasons at different times, and to not get too mad, and to know that it's actually cool that I can like be my true self on the page, my authoritative self as a teacher, my drunk self with celebrities, my sad self when I gotta be sad. And I do think it's like a uniquely writerly thing, because we have all of the thoughts and all of the feelings, and we also have this responsibility, obligation to share them, but also the shame of what if I don't share it good enough? So we have like this low self-esteem problem on top of this high self-esteem problem. We like think we have something to say that everybody wants to hear, but at the same time, we're afraid that nobody will care what we have to say. Like there are so many like dueling ego personalities in us. And that's what makes us really great creative people. I think it makes us relatable to readers, but also elevated, not elevated, but like in a position where we can tell them what they're thinking and feeling because we've experienced all of it. So yeah, go F. Scott Fitzgerald. You always say everything right. Good job.
Thank you. Yes, yes. And our last question is from Cooke Tani. Cooke, it is so great to see your name here. Cooke is a graduate of the MFA program and has a really killer, I'd say, tragicomic memoir that I can't wait to read. Cooke, please write me. Let's talk. The question from Cooke is, what is your approach or practice with actually writing the most humiliating, acid, hideous material? Do you have the best hours of the day to do this in particular portions of time? You just spoke to that a little, but more for Cooke.
Okay, so I have this trick, which is I like to write what I don't want the people I went to high school with to read about me. Those I know are the best, most important stories that I must share, that are like the most interesting, like rich stories that like everyone else will love, and they will love in a way where they're like toasting champagne to my like failure and my humiliation. But like, I just know, I know when I have something really good to write, when I feel so afraid that they're gonna find it. And that has been like such a good compass for me, where like there are so many stories in the book where it's like, I cannot have this, I cannot deal with the possibility that Jenna Shapiro is going to read this and then share with all of her friends, and they're going to laugh at me. And that's just when I know that I'm going to get an audience that is, I'm going to reach them and connect with them in a way that I would never if I hadn't let myself share these stories. Like, I think it allows for like the deepest possible connection with a reader, and it's the most amount I can give in being vulnerable, and it feels very good after it feels very scary. And it feels scary, you know, for a reason, because all of these things have been stigmatized. And again, like, humiliation is like this other tool that silences us and makes us small. So whenever I feel those feelings, I know that I am actually hitting on to something very powerful. And then I'm stoked, and then I can write that down. These things usually happen very late at night for me. A lot of it happens like before bed, like when I don't want to be thinking anymore. That's when I start thinking the most amount. And I'm thinking all the things I don't want to be thinking. And I try to get them all down on paper before I go to sleep. My mom won't let me go to sleep otherwise. And then I also feel this like added bonus where I'm like, thank God I'm a writer, that I can use all of this, that I don't have to like let it haunt me, that this is all these like opportunities to create art. Like everything that I feel embarrassed is actually just like a great opportunity. It's like an opportunity for humor, for connection, for depth, for like originality. I always tell my students, like, to be funnier, like, don't rely on cliches, rely on stuff that you do that like enrage or embarrass you. Like, instead of saying like men don't like to wash the dishes, like, what is it that your partner particularly does that drives you bonkers? And it's like opens every cabinet door in the kitchen, gets nothing, and walks away, leaving all the cabinet doors open. I was like, that to me is like such a better image. And you can now use that frustration to entertain or enlighten or inform someone else of something. So think about all those things that you don't want, particularly high school, especially middle school. Those are the best. Middle school people you don't want reading your stories. Those are the stories you must tell us. Those are the stories I want to read and will love you for. You will get your fans that way by writing the stories that you think your haters would make fun of you for. And figure out when you're at your most vulnerable. Like, for me, it's late at night. Maybe for you, it's the morning. I think we all write differently. And when we have these moments of inspiration, we must jump on them. But for me, I had to develop a writing practice, because what comes first, motivation or work? Wrong, it's work. So I just have to work until I'm motivated. And I'm rarely ever in the reverse position. The end.
Elissa, thank you so much. Hysterical is the truth, and it's hard to read and hard to hear, but there's an antidote, and I think it's also, as you've shown so beautifully, a book about how to wake up yourself, and how to wake up even by writing a tragicomic memoir. So thank you so much for being with us, and just for your generosity and all your great tips, and really just sharing the grim and hideous journey that led us to this moment. So thank you so much.
Thank you. My book has a lot of jokes in it, so you'll be entertained while you're reading about the darkest shit that's ever happened to me. So you're welcome.
Right. And now we'll go back to Izzy Angus, who will close us out.
Thank you all so much for attending today. We hope you will join us for more of our upcoming talks and workshops. This conversation was recorded, so if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your community, it will be available on our YouTube channel at this same link and our Facebook page. We will also feature this talk on our podcast, which you can find at www.ciispod.com or by searching CIIS Public Programs on your favorite podcast app. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good night.
you.